The year was 1986. The Snedeker family, seeking a fresh start and respite from their son's illness, moved to 208 Meriden Avenue in Southington, Connecticut. Headed by Al and Carmen, the family consisted of their 3 sons and a niece. They were drawn to the charming facade of the old house, unaware of the chilling secrets that lurked within its walls. The house, with its spacious rooms and inviting exterior, promised a haven for the family. They were eager to settle in and begin this new chapter of their lives. Little did they know their new home harbored a past shrouded in death and despair, a past that would soon weave its way into their lives. The Snedekers had stumbled upon a former funeral home. This discovery, initially unsettling, soon transformed into a terrifying ordeal that would forever alter their lives. The house held within its very foundation the echoes of countless goodbyes, of sorrow and loss. It was a place where the veil between the living and the dead felt perilously thin. As the family unpacked their belongings, an uneasy feeling settled upon them, a premonition that their new home was not as welcoming as it initially seemed. The Snedekers' excitement over their new home quickly turned to dread. What they had hoped would be a fresh start, a new chapter in their lives, soon became a descent into a living nightmare. As they began to uncover the house's morbid past, they stumbled upon old documents and photographs that hinted at the building's dark history. These weren't just any old papers, they were records of the house's previous life as a funeral home. The basement, shrouded in an unnatural chill, held the most disturbing discoveries. It was as if the very walls were whispering secrets of the past, secrets that were never meant to be uncovered. There, hidden amongst discarded furniture and forgotten relics, lay the tools of the death trade. Dust-covered and long abandoned, these items seemed to hold a sinister energy, as if they were waiting for someone to find them. Rusty embalming equipment, chillingly cold to the touch, seemed to whisper tales of their former use. Each tool, each piece of equipment, seemed to carry with it the echoes of the countless bodies that had passed through the house. The family unearthed coffin handles, their ornate designs a stark reminder of the countless souls that had passed through the house. These weren't just objects, they were symbols of the house's grim past. Most unsettling was the discovery of a drainage pit, its purpose clear, a grim necessity for the funeral home's gruesome business. The pit, dark and foreboding, seemed to be a portal to the house's sinister past. The air hung heavy with the weight of death, a palpable presence that sent shivers down their spines. It was as if the very atmosphere of the house was charged with the energy of the departed, a lingering reminder of the house's former occupants. These chilling remnants of the house's former life were more than just unsettling artifacts. They were a window into the past, a past that was filled with sorrow and death. Each item seemed to tell a story that was both fascinating and horrifying. They were harbingers of the terrors that awaited the Snedeker family, whispers from the grave that hinted at the darkness that permeated the very foundation of their new home. The house itself seemed to be alive, a living entity that was watching and waiting. Carmen, determined to make the house feel like a home, pushed aside her growing unease and continued unpacking. She tried to focus on the positive, on the potential that the house held, but the shadows seemed to grow longer with each passing day. She couldn't have known then that these chilling artifacts were not mere relics of a bygone era, but rather conduits to a dark energy that had seeped into the house's very core. This energy seemed to pulse and throb, a dark heartbeat that resonated through the walls. The Snedekers had unwittingly invited something sinister into their lives, something that had been lying dormant, waiting for the right moment to awaken. This presence, this dark force, was now a part of their reality, a reality that was becoming increasingly difficult to escape. Philip, the eldest son, was already battling Hodgkin's lymphoma when the family moved into the house. The move was supposed to be a fresh start, a new beginning for the family, but for Philip, it marked the beginning of a harrowing ordeal. His weakened state, both physically and emotionally, made him particularly vulnerable to the unseen forces lurking within the walls of their new home. The house, with its creaking floors and whispering winds, seemed to amplify his fears and anxieties. It began subtly with nightmares that left him drenched in a cold sweat, gasping for air as if an unseen entity had been stealing his breath. These nightmares were not just figments of his imagination, they felt real, too real. His once vibrant personality dimmed, replaced by a withdrawn silence punctuated by outbursts of anger and confusion. The boy who once filled the house with laughter now filled it with an eerie silence and unpredictable rage. Philip's behavior became increasingly erratic. He would talk to himself, mutter under his breath, and often seemed lost in a world only he could see. His paranoia grew, and he started to distrust even his closest family members. He spoke of shadowy figures lurking in the corners of his vision, whispering his name with icy breath. These figures were not just shadows, they had form and presence, and they terrified him to his core. He described feeling a cold hand on his shoulder, a presence that filled him with dread. This sensation was so vivid that he could almost see the hand, pale and ghostly, resting on him. His parents, initially attributing his disturbing accounts to the stress of the move and his illness, watched with growing concern as their son slipped further into a world they couldn't reach. They tried to comfort him, but their words seemed to fall on deaf ears. Doctors, baffled by Philip's deteriorating mental state, eventually diagnosed him with schizophrenia. They believed that his illness was manifesting in these terrifying hallucinations, but the family couldn't shake the feeling that something more sinister was at play. While medication offered some respite, it did little to quell the terrifying visions that continued to plague him. The pills dulled his senses but did not banish the shadows that haunted him. Philip's torment became a horrifying spectacle for the family to witness. They watched helplessly as he battled unseen forces, his cries for help echoing through the house. They were forced to confront the possibility that something beyond medical comprehension was at play, something sinister that was preying on their son's vulnerability. The house, once a symbol of hope, had become a battleground for Philip's soul. The paranormal activity escalated beyond Philip's terrifying visions, engulfing the entire Snedeker family in a nightmare. What began as unsettling dreams and eerie premonitions soon morphed into a full-blown haunting that no one could ignore. The once peaceful home became a theater of the macabre, where every shadow seemed to hide a lurking menace. Unexplained sounds pierced the silence of the night, disembodied voices whispering their names as if the very walls of the house were alive and conspiring against them. These whispers were not just random noises, they were deliberate, calling out to each family member, instilling a deep sense of dread and paranoia. Furniture dragging across the floor above, as if moved by invisible hands. The heavy wooden pieces would scrape and groan, their movements echoing through the house, making sleep an impossible luxury. Each night the family would brace themselves for the inevitable cacophony, their nerves frayed to the breaking point, and blood-curdling screams echoing from the basement. These were not the cries of any living being, but something far more sinister. The basement, once a place for storage and mundane activities, had become a portal to their worst fears, a place they dared not venture after dark. The air grew heavy with the stench of decaying flesh, a sickening odor that clung to their clothes and invaded their dreams. This putrid smell was a constant reminder of the malevolent presence that had taken over their home, making even the simplest act of breathing a torment. The house, once a symbol of hope and new beginnings, had transformed into a prison of fear. Its dilapidated exterior mirrored the decay within, both physical and spiritual. The broken windows and overgrown yard stood as silent witnesses to the family's ongoing ordeal. The family reported feeling unseen hands tugging at their clothes, as if the spirits were trying to make their presence known in the most personal and invasive ways. These ghostly touches were not just unsettling, they were a violation of their personal space, a constant reminder that they were never alone. Icy breath on their necks, sending shivers down their spines. This chilling sensation would come without warning, often in the dead of night, making the family feel as though they were being watched by unseen eyes. The cold breath was a stark contrast to the warmth of their bodies, a physical manifestation of the otherworldly presence, and invisible forces shoving them against walls. These violent encounters left bruises and marks, evidence of the unseen assailants. The family lived in constant fear of the next attack, never knowing when or where it would come from. Objects moved on their own, disappearing and reappearing in impossible locations. Keys, toys, and even furniture would vanish, only to reappear in places they had no business being. This poltergeist activity added another layer of chaos to their already tumultuous lives. Doors slammed shut with bone-jarring force, their locks seemingly manipulated by an unseen hand. These violent closures were not just startling, they were a clear message from the entities that the family was not welcome in their own home. Fear became a constant companion, seeping into their every thought and action. The The family found themselves jumping at the slightest noise, their nerves perpetually on edge. The psychological toll was immense, affecting their relationships and their ability to function in daily life. The once ordinary house had become a battleground, the family caught in the crosshairs of an unseen war. Every room, every hallway, every corner of the house held the potential for terror. The home that was supposed to be their sanctuary had turned into a place of relentless torment. Carmen, a devout Catholic, attempted to find solace in her faith. She turned to prayer, hoping that divine intervention would offer some respite from the relentless haunting. Her rosary beads became a lifeline, a tangible connection to her beliefs in the face of overwhelming fear. She placed crucifixes in every room, their presence a symbolic shield against the encroaching darkness. These religious artifacts were meant to ward off evil, but even their sacred power seemed to wane in the face of such malevolence. But the paranormal activity continued unabated, a relentless assault on their sanity. Lights flickered, objects levitated, and the very fabric of reality seemed to warp around them. The family was trapped in a nightmare from which there seemed to be no escape. Desperate for help, the Snedekers turned to anyone who might offer a glimmer of hope in their fight against the unseen terror that had taken root in their home. They consulted priests, mediums, and paranormal investigators, each bringing their own methods and beliefs to the table. Yet despite their efforts, the haunting persisted, leaving the family in a perpetual state of fear and uncertainty.